welcome back to The Renewed Mind. I am so glad to be here with you. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I am seeing all over the place and really how it affects your confidence and what it says about your confidence. So what I'm talking to you about today is the idea of oversharing. We all have that one friend that whenever we see her or whenever we are reading her posts on social media, it feels like she's just sharing too much information. And if we're not careful, this can be something that we end up doing ourselves, and oversharing has a lot of problems. And I think with the introduction of social media into our lives many years ago, it really allowed oversharing to be more in the forefront of the behaviors that we do, because it used to be we could only overshare to a limited number of people, right? Whenever you're oversharing, it's in person or on the phone, really limited number of people that we could overshare to. And with the introduction of social media, we have kind of taken that level of intimacy and we put it and broadcast it on our social media. And it's creating a false sense of intimacy. And today I want to just talk to you about the reason why we overshare, the problems with it, and then also how we can stop oversharing, how we can really walk in confidence, because I think that really what oversharing says is that you're not confident. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the reasons why we overshare in the first place. So the first reason, and these aren't in any particular order, it's not like one is a bigger reason or anything, but the first is loneliness. Whenever people overshare, what I seem to find with my clients and talking with women and coaching them is they're wanting to connect with someone. And it really stems from a place of feeling lonely. And we know that the way that we feel impacts our actions. So if you are thinking thoughts that make you feel lonely, then that feeling of loneliness is going to lead to actions. Often they're not going to be healthy options. So if you're feeling lonely and you want to have positive behaviors that result out of that, maybe going out and networking or talking with friends or trying to initiate ways to connect with people. Instead, what you're doing is you're trying to connect with people through oversharing and through really just laying it all out there, kind of airing your dirty laundry, sharing way too much information. Another reason why women tend to overshare is because of insecurity. So really you want to feel validated maybe in your choices or things that you have, and you want to prove that you have more value, so you share more. I saw this recently in just in my circle of friends in social media, and I have an acquaintance on social media who had made a really large purchase, and it was her husband made a purchase and then she made another purchase. It was back to back, and she felt like she had to share all the details of these purchases online. And what I saw between the lines was someone who felt like they needed to be validated. Maybe they felt like their income wasn't where they wanted it to be, and so now they're purchasing things to just try to validate that they have worth. And in my experience, people who feel their worth and they know who they are in Christ, they know how much value they hold as just a human being, they know that they're worthy just as a human being, they don't tend to put everything out there to get validation from other people. So social media kind of reinforces oversharing, in my opinion, because whenever that post was made, there were tons of comments below saying, oh, what a beautiful car. What about, what about this? I can't believe how sweet your husband was to buy you this. Like, there was a lot of comments that were listed underneath that post. And that was the goal, right? The goal of oversharing was to get that validation from other people, that outside validation. Another reason people might overshare is because of anxiety. And really what this stems from is feeling like they want to fit in, and the only way to fit in or to connect is by oversharing. Now, this is really linked to loneliness as well. So whenever you want to fit in, whenever you're feeling kind of apprehensive about not fitting in, you tend to overshare. You want to share details of your life in order to kind of create common ground with other people. And so whenever you're oversharing and you are trying to get that connection built, the issue is, and we're going to talk about this a little later in the video, but the problem is that connection isn't real because it's being forced. Something else that goes along these same lines, and another reason why I see oversharing, is because people are still stuck in the victim mentality. So I have a podcast episode specifically about victim mentality, so if you want to check it out, I'll leave a link in the description for you. But victim mentality is the idea that you want people to feel bad for you. And really it's not that you're consciously doing that, but you want to try and get people on your side by having them pity you in a way. And it's the idea that everything is happening to you versus you having some control and some responsibility for your life and for your mindset and emotions and actions. So whenever we are talking about this idea of victim mentality and how it relates to oversharing, sometimes we want to share details about things all over social media or all over, everywhere basically. And instead of sharing details with one or two people, which is honestly what the Bible says to do in regards to confrontations or arguments, instead we share it for everyone because we're looking for, again, that validation, we're looking for that connection, and this becomes a problem. I've seen this a lot in the Facebook posts of maybe there's an argument between a husband and wife, and instead of just dealing with it internally in the marriage or talking with a trusted mentor or a pastor, women and men sometimes will go on social media and just share all of the information about the issues or what the husband did that made him so mad or whatever it was. And really this is a problem because it's unscriptural. So whenever you have an issue with someone else, you are supposed to go directly to that person. And then if that still is not fixing the issue, then you're supposed to bring in one person, like a mentor or a pastor, someone who can help facilitate that reconciliation. And whenever we overshare, what we're saying is that we're not confident enough in our relationship to deal with it the way that God says. I always coach women to really be cautious about what they put on social media and evaluate everything that they are about to post before they actually post it, and think about the reasons why they're posting it before they do. So it's easy to just type some stuff out and send it to Facebook and Instagram and all of that, and Twitter's really a place I've seen where people just put whatever they think, and they're not kind of processing what is causing them to think that way in the first place. So the action is that you're posting a specific thing that's coming from an emotion, which is coming from your thoughts. And so whenever I coach women, especially women who struggle with oversharing, I teach them to really be aware of what emotion is driving that action. Because really, what we're doing whenever we're oversharing is we're trying to connect, but we're avoiding real intimacy. We're avoiding those real connections. And a lot of times what this is embellishing details about a situation or oversharing with people that we don't even really like, or maybe we are struggling to get along with, and so we share details, personal details that are really none of that person's business. This actually happened to me over the course of the last year. Someone who I consider an acquaintance, we're not super close friends, but she came to me and shared some very intimate information about her marriage, and I didn't share that information with anyone, of course, but I decided to just be curious about why she chose to share that with me in particular. She has closer friends than me. It was a very personal information, and the only thing I could come up with was she was oversharing in order to avoid real intimacy. And this can be an issue whenever you lack confidence, and really confidence is an emotion, and that can be changed by your thoughts. And so one of the problems with oversharing, and we've talked about kind of the emotions that go behind that, but one of the problems with oversharing is that it can be unconscious. After it becomes a habit, we end up oversharing more without even realizing it. And so it's important to be aware of your thoughts. A lot of times when we overshare, you might in the middle of that conversation or after the fact, you realize that that is way too much information and you don't want to share it. You kind of wish that you could rein it back, and so you feel really vulnerable about that. And what I've really seen is that oversharing doesn't solve anything. So if we're oversharing to connect with other people or we're oversharing to avoid anxiety, we're not creating intimacy whenever we overshare. We're not resolving our anxiety whenever we overshare. And so I want to just end this sharing some ideas for how you can stop oversharing. And the first is to recognize the real reason for this action. So the action is oversharing, sharing more information than you should. And so I want you to dig deep and figure out what emotion is driving that oversharing. And then once you figure out the emotion, then I want you to think about what thought is behind that. So this is the kind of thought work that I use with women in the Mindset Reset, and I am also going to be opening up a group coaching program very soon, so make sure that you are paying attention and hitting subscribe and following so that you can be one of the first to join that group coaching, because this is truly where the rubber meets the road, right? If you want to change the way that you're acting, you have to change the way that you're thinking and you're feeling. And really that takes someone from outside the realm of your life to help you to determine and to figure out until you can get those skills really figured out for yourself. So the second thing to do to stop oversharing is, as you are figuring out the reason for it, to be thinking about and maybe even journaling through your emotions before you overshare. There's nothing wrong with posting to social media. There's nothing wrong with purchasing something and sharing it. It's the reason behind it. You can do any of those things, but I want you to like your reason. So if your reason is that you're lonely or your reason is that you want validation, then you probably don't like that reason. If your reason is because you're wanting to encourage someone or you're wanting to thank your husband publicly for something that he's done for you, that's different. If you like your reason, then go ahead and share. But be paying attention to what your reason is. The second thing I would say whenever you are trying to avoid oversharing is to be aware of your audience. Be aware of the people who are around you. We don't want to just share our information with just anyone. Just like that example I gave with the woman who I didn't really know that well, the information that she shared would probably be best shared with someone she was closer to, that knew her better, that could give advice and counsel, someone who knew her marriage way better than I did. And so be aware of your audience and be aware of the scope of your audience. So if you're sharing something on social media, be aware of all the people who are your friends on social media. And if you are, say your Instagram profile is public, realize that you're sharing that with whoever wants to read it. And so if it's something that you'd rather keep compartmentalized to specific people in your life, then make sure that that's what you do. Make sure that you are being aware of who you're sharing your information with. Another thing I would say is to create healthy boundaries about what you share. Now, I love the idea of rules. If you know me personally, then you know that I love rules. I love following the rules. And in fact, I just had some eyeliner put on, and the lady who was doing my eyeliner said, okay, now you can't, she gave me a list of things that I couldn't do after she put this permanent eyeliner on my eyes. And I said, I will follow it to the letter. And she said, well, as days go, depending on how you feel. And I'm like, nope, if you give me a rule, I'm going to follow it. So the way that I've used that as a benefit in my life is by creating rules for myself in regards to goals that I want to meet. For instance, if I want to spend less on Amazon, I set a rule that I sign out of my Amazon account and I have to log in, or I might say I only purchase every other week. So if I put something in my cart, it has to stay there for a certain number of days. These are the kind of rules that kind of make your goals more achievable. So maybe before you share a post, you have one trusted friend that you take a screenshot of what you're going to say and share it with them first, and then they can say, maybe you could take this out, or maybe you shouldn't say this at all. If you have that rule, until you are more comfortable with the skills that you have in determining what is oversharing and what is just normal, then I would definitely recommend that. Another healthy boundary could be that you don't share details about particular events in your life. So if you love posting on social media and you you make crafts and you want to show that, or you have all these different things, but you want to steer clear of anything about your marriage, maybe that's a rule for you so that you don't overshare about your marriage, either in social media or with friends. Maybe you have one trusted friend that you share problems with about your family, and that specific friend is the only person that you talk to. Another thing that you can do to stop oversharing is by reevaluating all your social media posting. And one thing that I think about is that people who are posting everything are usually covering up the real truth. So if you feel like you always have to share how great your husband is on social media, maybe it's because behind closed doors you don't really feel like he's that great. And this is different for every person, and so don't take it personally if this isn't you. But for me, what I've seen is women who are posting about, it feels like embellished and it just feels over the top. Then, I see that on their social media, and then like a couple of months later, they are filing for divorce. One of the biggest examples of this was the Dave and Rachel Hollis divorce, where they were having conferences on marriage. They were posting about how great their marriage was, and then a couple of months later, they were announcing that they were getting a divorce. And so one thing I've seen is that women who are oversharing details about particular parts of their lives are really just trying to cover up or trying to validate certain lack in their life. The last thing I want to leave you with today is the fact that oversharing is not the same as authenticity. And the value of information that you put out there does not equal the value of genuineness. And so sometimes we think that the two are connected. Like the more I share, the more genuine and authentic I'm being, or the more transparent I'm being because I'm sharing all this information. And I want you to see and really just change your thinking to understand that this is not the case. You can be authentic and genuine on social media and not overshare specific details in your life. And for me, whenever I think of transparency on social media, I had a friend who really felt like she needed to be super transparent on social media, and I guess I just don't value that as much. I'm not saying to lie on social media, of course, but I don't think that our lives have to be 100% transparent and open to everyone on our Facebook or Instagram accounts. And for me, that means that I share specific details and I'm honest whenever I share, but I don't share every particular detail of my life. For instance, one example that I can think of this is a influencer who has several tattoos, and she is very open about her home life and her marriage, but her tattoos, she doesn't share anything about why she has them. And people have asked, and she says, that's something I'm going to keep for myself. That's personal that I'm going to keep for myself. Does that mean she's not being transparent? Of course not. Does that mean she's not genuine? Of course not. She just keeps particular things to herself. So I want you to go about your day after listening to this and really just deciding what you want to share from an intentional standpoint, and not just oversharing out of loneliness or out of a want to connect or out of seeking outside validation. Instead, share with people who value you, share with people who you already have a connection with, and go from sharing everything to having deeper conversations and really just being aware of why you're oversharing and how to stop doing that. So I hope that this helped you. If it did, make sure to leave me a comment. You can send me an email. I would love to hear from you. And again, make sure to subscribe, and I will talk to you guys next time.